Huawei's iconic GT series have a new member, lighter about the price, but is it the same way about the features? Should we get to know better the Huawei Watch GT3 SE? Why not? Let's inspect! Okay, welcome. Nice to meet you. Michael is my name, and this is where cool technology meets thorough reviews. And every time I get to see something which is my area of expertise, there's somehow no way of skipping it. And pretty much the same happened with this brand new smartwatch coming from Huawei. And as you probably know by watching this channel, my personal favorites about well-designed and functional smartwatches are namely Huawei, and I've never been sponsored or in direct communication with their global marketing team. So when I saw the GT3 SE, which is this one over here, I immediately thought I need to find out how it differs from the original GT3, which I've been using all the time throughout 2022, because no matter what kind of smartwatch I was testing, I somehow felt the need to go back to the GT series. So in this episode, our thorough inspection and of course the idea to expose all the strengths, but also all the weaknesses, and figure out how the GT3 SE ranks against its competitors. As a starter, Huawei Watch GT3 SE has almost the same price as the GT3. It's launched at €179 in Europe and unfortunately will follow the fate of most other Huawei-made devices and not appear officially in the States. But it will still be orderable via international websites like eBay and AliExpress. Given its specs and health tracking features, it's gonna compete against devices like Amazfit GT-R4, some of the mainstream Garmin products, and maybe even some of the prosumer sports watches. Going straight to the unboxing, a new style. This time Huawei brings some lighter colors, and the box looks quite fresh. They won't make us wait for too long before we get our hands on the watch itself, because here it is. Pretty nice looking. The colors are indeed sporty, well corresponding to the needs of people that maintain sporty life and are looking to match this style to the smartwatch that they wear. The case is plastic. Here the goal is to reduce the weight of the watch. You're going to notice some ideas inspired by the GT Runner series. This is more like the bridge between the Runner edition and the more classic-looking GT3. I must admit that there are certain concerns in my mind about the plastic material of the lugs, because other models have shown that, especially after some time, this can turn into a trouble. I personally try to stay away from anything but metal lugs. The overall design is awesome, and the choice of colors once again seems to be trend-setting. The bottom area hosts the health tracking sensors, or at least most of them, and with exception for the material, it just looks like the regular GT3. One other thing to note, the edges of the case to go above the display glass. It's a very good idea about keeping it in mint condition for longer periods of time. Besides the interesting design, there are some promising specs as well. The watch has 1.43-inch display, resolution is 466 by 466 pixels, seems to use the same chipset as the slightly older GT3, supports the popular public global positioning systems. There are a bunch of sensors present, like the advanced HR and SpO2 tracking, there's the inbuilt barometer, a 455 mAh battery which can last about 2 weeks per charge, more than 100 tracked workout modes, plus a training assistant, and the watch weighs only 35.6 grams. To frame all of these specs into simple words, I believe this smartwatch is more or less the GT Runner edition re-released at almost half of the price. And I believe this makes perfect sense, because many people would think, why do they do it almost a year after the GT Runner has appeared? The truth is that the GT Runner contains a lot of very interesting courses. It's like a sports companion that you have all the time for free, and probably that was kind of inflating the price of the GT Runner, so obviously Huawei decided to re-release it at a much more affordable price with slightly more different design, and probably the major reason to do so is that finally there is integration for Strava in the Huawei Health smartphone app. And as you probably know, for most athletes, if there is no integration to Strava, that's kind of a no-go device, which is really a great achievement by Huawei, and I'm pretty sure that finally these smartwatches are going to be something that people who practice sports a lot more finally going to take into consideration. Other than that, you can notice that design with the original GT3 is very similar. This is definitely sportier. Unfortunately, one of my favorite features here, the digital rotating crown, is obviously missing, because if I go to the app launcher, kind of a gimmick, doesn't scroll, and that's fairly annoying. Also, while the hardware is pretty capable, the scrolling speed is fantastic, and a lot of tracking features are there still is no Wi-Fi module. I need to tell you, when I got this watch, there have been 2 firmware updates, and I needed almost 4 hours in order to push these updates to the watch, because there have been Bluetooth drops. The watch was unexpectedly rebooting during these updates, and honestly, that's not really the software experience you're looking for from a smartwatch in the end of 2022. Now, diving into the menus, this is a well-known way of interaction with the watch. The top button opens the app list and acts as a home button or triggers an activity. The other button launches the workouts by default, and this is a customizable button. I still cannot forgive the absence of scrolling support through the crown, but if you eventually settle for endless scrolling and get used to it, it kind of feels the same as generation 1 or 2 of the series. The amount of apps is almost the same as the GT3, and the home screen can be in the form of a grid or a list. The health tracking related apps appear at the start. Here, the workouts are probably the most interesting section, because you have access to a lot of courses and trainings that you can use. This is precious and extremely helpful if you're starting to build up your body's stamina.
Start the workout. First position, speed walk, 3 minutes. Try to keep your heart rate between 96 and 144. Warm up before starting the workout to prevent injuries.
Each course has a description and information about intensity and difficulty. After each and every session, you get a summary and recommendation about the recovery time, and this is really well implemented and something that puts the series on par with some entirely sports-oriented brands like Garmin. Of course, each and every workout that could be performed outdoors is gonna use GPS, so you can get very detailed information about the route, the pace, and many other components. Oh, and you can preload GPS tracks as well. Other than that, your health of course is being tracked depending on how you ask the watch to do it. You can take pulse measures each and every minute, and also you can rely on continuous blood oxygen saturation tracking. You could also track the sleep cycles, but I feel that here some improvements could be made in order to improve the accuracy. Overall health activity tracking, some productivity tools, that's the usual kind of apps that you're going to find with most similar feature watches that are currently present. Compared to the regular GT3, a temperature sensor is missing. Another area where the GT series now needs to catch up with is the absence of a calendar app, which is quite shocking, especially knowing that it's the 3rd generation already. Let's move on now to the smartphone app and see how all this collected data is being visualized. Here we face yet another challenge. Getting the Huawei Health app from Google Play Store is a no-go. You need to download it from Huawei's website or their app gallery or a third-party location. I can't say it's Huawei to blame about that, because it's Google who have decided to quit supporting Huawei's devices in their ecosystem, but once you get things running, the app is almost perfect. It looks great, contains tons of information. We're going to take a look at the heart rate statistics for a starter, visualized in a great way and a lot more detail than some other competitors. It's the same about sleep tracking, and the amount of tips and tricks in that regard is also important to be mentioned. Sports tracking, this is yet again superb, with so many details about the heart rate, the pace, the altitude where applicable, and so on. Honestly, everything looks great until you look at the GPS data. Here's an example. Yes, it's been cloudy during that day, but notice the curve. This is actually me driving, and it looks like part of the time I've been flying. Accuracy is disappointing. Maybe if I say it is not trustworthy at all, this will be too much, but definitely not something we hoped for. Speaking of accuracy, if you have concerns about the HR data based on the wrist measurements, you can connect Chest HR Tracker via Bluetooth. ANT Plus communication is unfortunately not supported at this point. After these few disappointments, let me cheer you up. Battery life is almost extreme. Yeah, 2 weeks are definitely achievable. You can make phone calls, works like charm with all Android devices that I've tried. Notifications work flawlessly and you can respond via predefined answers. As for watch faces, they also are superb. The market is full of interesting, colorful, information-rich and customizable watch faces. The best part is that now each one of them gets rating about battery consumption so that you know whether to expect decrease with the battery consumption or not. And there also is an app gallery link with some extra apps that you can run. There even are a few navigation apps, but don't expect too much out of them because each one is going to require a connection to your smartphone. Before the usual wrap up, if I may put all the drawbacks together, starting with the smartphone app download concerns, the lack of a calendar app, the lack of crown scrolling function, the plastic lugs, the inaccurate GPS sometimes, the lack of NFC for contactless payments, the annoying firmware update times due to the lack of Wi-Fi module, and maybe also some software imperfections, like the fact that Do Not Disturb mode still doesn't turn off the AOD mode, which I promise you in darkroom could be quite a disturbance. So, in the end, if you're looking for a great sports watch with exceptional battery life and integration with Strava, Adidas Running, Komoot and so on, and costs just a fraction of the price of premium devices by Garmin and Chorus, I think you're looking at it. Because the watch GT3 SE truly delivers excellent performance. If you want to use it as a daily driver and track your health, but also rely on most of the features for completing tasks and communicating with people, that still is a great choice, although the lack of a digital crown makes me somehow lean towards the regular Huawei Watch GT3. And don't get me wrong, this device ticks a lot of boxes for being excellent. However, we have to admit that for almost 12 months, which is the period between the release of the Huawei Watch GT3 Runner and the GT3 SE, there's almost zero development in terms of hardware, with exception of the case and the design of this smartwatch. Therefore, think twice before you get it. It could be great if you're looking for a sports device, but maybe Huawei have other better options in case you want to go the smarter way. So that's everything I wanted to share with you about the Watch GT3 SE, and I hope that we've covered most of the questions you might have. In case you have more, then be invited, comments are down below the video. Thank you very much for watching this episode. If you want to support the channel, then go ahead, check the video description, subscribe to the channel, and give us a like, and I'm pretty sure gonna see you very, very soon. Bye!